So today's question is one we get all the time.
So I found a lot online. How do I know if I can actually build on it?
That's a really good question. And honestly, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that just because a lot is for sale, it's automatically buildable. It might be, but there's a few things that we want to talk about and questions we want answered before you fall in love with it.
But for today's conversation, let's assume you've already found a lot and you're trying to decide if it's the right one.
Yeah. So one quick note before we dive in is every build is a little bit different. So the order of steps that you go through might change depending on your situation. However, these are the things that you're going to want to evaluate before you commit to purchasing a piece of land.
One of the first things we do is research the property. We don't just do that to check boxes. Every one of the items can completely change whether or not the lot works for your goals. So let's go through a few of the biggest ones.
So one of the first things we're going to look at is access. Now, if your lot has a lot of road frontage, it's going to be pretty straightforward. But if the lot we're looking at is landlocked, that's when we're going to start asking more questions.
We're going to need to know, is there right-of-way access? Is there ingress and egress with that right-of-way? And is it wide enough for construction equipment?
Yes, and if you share that right-of-way with the neighboring properties, is there some sort of recorded agreement? Who's responsible for maintaining it? These are the kind of important details that could come up later on, so we want to make sure we know about it before you buy the property.
Exactly. Before you go and fall in love with the views or the trees, we want to make sure you can actually get to your property. We're also looking for wetlands and floodplains. And this is more than just asking whether there's a creek on the property. If your driveway has to cross that creek, you may need a culvert. That can become significantly expensive.
Yeah, there may also be wetland buffer areas where you can't build, and those buffer requirements can affect where your home, well, or septic system are allowed to go. So we're trying to understand the entire property, not just one feature.
So next we talk about utilities. Does it have public water and sewer? If not, it's going to need well and septic. And what about electricity?
And here's the thing about the public utilities. Even if those are available, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be inexpensive to connect. How far away are those lines? Will the road have to be dug up and then repaired in order to connect them? And are there any sort of connection or tap fees? These are all expenses that will add to your site development costs and can have a huge impact on your budget.
Exactly. So the price of the lot is not the only thing we have to consider. We hear people talk about perc tests all the time. And what exactly does that mean?
A perc test tells us whether the soil can support a septic system. So if the property doesn't have access to public sewer, this becomes really important. But here's something many buyers don't realize. A perc approval isn't simply yes or no. It often specifies the size of home the property can support.
So if the lot is approved for a 3-bedroom septic system, but your dream home is a 5-bedroom home, that's something we need to know before buying the property. We're also looking for conservation easements and environmental restrictions, and that could be protecting farmland, protecting forests, and other natural resources.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So one time we evaluated a property in Montgomery County that looked fantastic. It was buildable. But once we looked at the cost of removing enough protected trees to build the home, the fees alone were estimated at over $100,000. And this just completely changed whether the property made financial sense. So when we're looking at these things, we're not just asking, can you build? We're asking, does this still make sense for you?
I hear the word setbacks all the time. What are they?
You can think of setbacks as invisible building lines. They determine how close your house can be to roads, neighboring properties, and property lines. But here's why they matter. You might have 5 acres, sounds huge, but once you account for setbacks, the well, the septic reserve area, neighboring wells and septic systems, the topography of the lot, environmental restrictions, sometimes you're left with a surprisingly small buildable area. And that's why we always tell clients, don't judge a lot by its acreage, judge it by its buildable area.
So what if I don't even know what house I want? That's completely normal. You don't need construction drawings, but you should have a general idea. Do you want 1 level, 2-story, a walkout basement, a side entry garage? Those big picture goals help us determine whether the lot is likely to support the type of home you're trying to build. We're also looking closely at the topography. Sometimes a gentle slope is perfect for a walkout basement, but steep slopes can limit where you're actually allowed to build.
And don't forget about your driveway. Just because the house fits doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a practical way to reach it. So again, we're evaluating the entire site, not just where the house might sit.
If everything still looks good on paper, now it's actually time to walk the property.
Yeah, pictures online only tell part of the story.
Exactly. And buyers are typically looking at the property itself and how it feels and maybe the views. But we're going to look at utilities, the terrain, and how it sits in relation to other neighbors.
Yeah, sometimes a lot that looked incredible online starts to feel a little different once we're out there walking the lot and seeing where the house will actually be placed. If everything checks out, then now we can start talking about putting together an offer. And this is where one of the most important protections comes in, the feasibility contingency.
So, what does that do?
Well, it's basically going to give you time to truly check out if this lot is going to work out for your plans. And this is really where we start to bring in additional experts to find that out. Depending on the property, this time period can often be 30 to 60 days or sometimes even longer. And during this time, you might want to hire an engineer, conduct a survey, work with the builder to place a conceptual drawing of your house on the lot, verify setbacks and the location of the septic field and the well, maybe even install a well in some situations.
The goal is simple. We're answering one question. Can this lot successfully become the home that I'm dreaming about?
And sometimes the answer is yes.
And sometimes we discover something changes the picture. And that's actually exactly why we have this process. We'd rather discover that before closing than after.
Yeah.
You probably noticed that we keep saying things like, we'll bring in an engineer, we'll verify that. And that's intentional.
Yeah, because we're not engineers, surveyors, or soil scientists. Our job or our role is to know what questions need to be answered to help bring in the right experts who know those answers and then help you decipher all that information to make your decision.
So buying a lot really isn't about buying the prettiest lot.
No, it's actually about finding land that can successfully become the home you're dreaming about. And this is why having the right team on your side from the beginning can save you a lot of time, money, and a lot of stress. So if you're thinking about building or looking at land, we'd love to help.
And if you have questions about new construction, you can call or text either of us.